In the chaos of World War I, soldiers weren't the only ones fighting. In the shadows of occupied Belgium, a British nurse waged her own battle, not with weapons, but with compassion. Edith Cavell risked everything to save the lives of Allied soldiers, guiding them to freedom while knowing she was signing her own death warrant. Betrayed and arrested in 1915, she faced her executioners with unwavering courage. Her death sent shockwaves across the world, turning her into a symbol of defiance, mercy, and sacrifice. Edith Cavell's story begins in Swordston, a village near Norwich, England. Her father, Reverend Frederick Cavell, moved there shortly after his ordination, having previously served as a curate in nearby East Carlton. He became so attached to Swordston that he remained its vicar for the next 45 years. While studying in London, he fell in love with his housekeeper's daughter, Louise Warming. After she completed her education to become a parson's wife, they married. In 1863, Frederick accepted the position at Swordston, and 2 years later, on the 4th of December 1865, Edith Louisa Cavell was born. At first, the Cavells lived in a temporary parsonage some distance from the church at the bottom of Swordston's Common. This fine Georgian farmhouse still stands today and is known as Cavell House, as it was here that Edith was born. The same year Edith was born, a new vicarage was built next to the church. This became the home she knew and grew up in, where her 3 younger siblings, Florence, Lillian, and John, were later born. The vicarage was built at Frederick Cavell's own expense, and local people say it nearly ruined him. From then on, he was known for living modestly. Despite the family's limited means and sometimes unappetizing meals, they were always eager to share what they had with those in need. Sunday lunch was a cherished family tradition, and no matter what was prepared, an equal portion was always set aside for local families facing hardship. Mr. Cavell was a kind man at heart, but firm to the point of sternness where his duty was concerned. He ruled his home with evangelical strictness. He abhorred lying and raised his children to have an unwavering respect for the truth. He was adamant that his last name, Cavell, was pronounced to rhyme with gravel, not hell. Similarly, he was unwavering in his commitment to live by his principles, which included compassion for others, self-sacrifice, and prayer. His daughter Edith was a thoughtful child, and her unfailing consideration for others and her concern for their welfare earned her the affection of everyone who knew her. But even as a child, her natural gentleness was combined with a strong sense of duty, no doubt shaped by her father's teachings and example. Selflessness was evident from childhood. When she learned that her father desperately needed a church room to house the growing Sunday school, she took it upon herself to help. At just a young age, she wrote directly to John Thomas Pelham, the Bishop of Norwich, explaining the problem. The bishop agreed to help on the condition that the village raised some of the funds. Without hesitation, Edith and her sister used their artistic talents to paint and sell handmade cards, raising an astonishing £300. Edith then wrote back to the bishop, reminding him of his promise. Soon after, the church room was built, adjoining the vicarage. Both Mrs. Cavell and Edith taught in the Sunday school and acted as godmothers to several local babies who, in later years, still treasured their signed copies of the Bible and Pilgrim's Progress. She was determined to make a difference. Edith once wrote, "Someday, somehow, I'm going to do something useful. I don't know what it will be. I only know it will be something for people." This sense of purpose would remain with her throughout her life, shaping the path she would eventually follow. Despite the strictness of her father's values, Edith's sense of duty and compassion remained undeterred, even in the mundane parts of her life, like the Victorian Sabbath. Sundays in the Victorian vicarage were quite structured by today's standards, with little room for leisure activities. No cards, no books allowed, except the Bible. Frederick Cavell had a strong sense of religious discipline and insisted on keeping a strict Sabbath. Edith wrote to her favourite cousin Eddie, "Do come and stay again soon, but not for a weekend. Father's sermons are so long and dull." The Cavell children were known to sneak in a game of cards in the study while father was at church. They certainly were not dour and sour Victorians that many biographers suggest. The vicar could easily be tempted to disguise himself as a bear and cause the Cavell children to shriek with delight. Despite the structure and discipline of her home life, Edith's curiosity and creativity flourished. She had a keen mind, a love for nature, and an eye for beauty, qualities that became evident even in her early education. Like her sense of duty, her intellectual pursuits were nurtured within the walls of the vicarage before she embarked on formal schooling. Edith and her two younger sisters, Florence and Lillian, had their early education not at the recently opened village school but at home. Reverend Cavell, her father, taught all four of his children at the vicarage. During this time, Edith became quite an accomplished artist, specializing in painting flowers, much inspired by Landseer, a popular Victorian artist. Spring in Swordston is still a spectacle of wild flowers around the common, although many species are disappearing. There were some 200 in her day. Flowers were a fascination to her, and she would collect and draw them as they grew on the common. One or two village folk treasure examples of her work. A powder box given to Mrs. Emma Burgess at the birth of her baby was beautifully painted with flowers by Edith. Edith had a great respect and love of nature, and she seems always to have surrounded herself with plants and animals. Many of her photographs show her with her dogs. The church has two chalk drawings of reindeer dated 10-10-82, showing the influence of the favourite Victorian painter Landseer. She also enjoyed ice skating in winter. A 96-year-old member of the Unthank family who lived at Intwood Hall can recall her seeing her skating down by the ford at Intwood and enjoying herself. Nearer at home, the moat at the old rectory behind the church would often freeze in winter, and this was a favourite haunt of the Cavell children. During this time, she's also to have jokingly confided in a friend that she would like to be buried in Westminster Abbey. In 1881, Edith finally attended school at Norwich High School before continuing her education at three boarding schools in Kensington, London, Clevedon, Bristol, and Laura Court School, Peterborough, located within the cathedral precincts. At Laura Court, she trained to become a pupil teacher. During this era, such institutions prided themselves on offering a high moral training. Laura Court was no exception. Strictly run by a fearsome dragon, and according to one former pupil, carrying the distinct smell of cats, margarine, and treacle. However, the school excelled in French instruction and 10 minutes of daily conversation as part of the curriculum. Edith showed a natural talent for the language, and her proficiency led the head teacher, Margaret Gibson, to recommend her for a governess position with the Francois family in Brussels in 1890. Before securing this post, she worked in several other governess roles. At 21, Edith began her first job as a governess in 1886, working for a clergy household in the village of Steeple Bumpstead, Essex. Despite the demands of her role, she made time for her hobbies, particularly tennis and dancing. She once danced until her feet bled, ruining her new shoes, a testament to her enthusiasm. She was remembered as always full of fun, always smiling, and wonderfully kind to the children in her care. She later took a short-term position as a governess for some of the Gurney children at Keswick New Hall in a neighbouring village, where she was also fondly remembered. In 1888, Edith received a small inheritance and decided to use it to travel to Austria and Bavaria. During her time abroad, she was deeply impressed by a free hospital run by Dr. Wolvenberg. Moved by what she saw, she donated part of her inheritance to the hospital and returned home with a growing interest in nursing. Recommended by her former teacher Margaret Gibson, Edith Cavell gladly accepted a governess position with the Francois family in 1890. She moved to their home at Avenue Louise, 154, in Brussels, where she remained for 5 years, becoming a firm favourite with the family. This move to Belgium was significant in many ways. Edith refined her skills as a teacher, nurtured her artistic talent, perfected her French, and developed a deep love for Brussels and Belgium. The Francoise family consisted of 4 children: Margaret, 13, Georges, 12, Ellen, 8, and Eveline, 3. At the time, Avenue Louise was lined with 4 rows of horse chestnut trees, and Edith and the children would often watch King Leopold pass by on his way to the Bois de la Cambre. Mrs. Ellen Françoise later described Edith as kind but strict, always ensuring the children were engaged in interesting activities. She organised tea parties where the children acted as hosts and performed charades, blending entertainment with education. During this period, Edith continued sketching and painting, further honing her artistic skills. Her unwavering commitment to honesty became evident during her time with the Françoise family. When Mrs. Françoise once asked her to tell a visitor that she was not at home, Edith refused, stating she could never tell a lie. This steadfast moral resolve foreshadowed the integrity she would later demonstrate, even in the most perilous circumstances. The Françoise family spent part of the year at a country chateau near the Dutch-German border, where Edith spent much of her time with the children. They later recalled her as firm but kind, with a great love for nature and animals, particularly dogs, and enjoyed painting and drawing. During the summers, Edith returned to Salisbury to visit her family, bringing back fond memories of her time in Belgium. In 1895, upon hearing of her father's ill health, Edith left the Françoise family and returned to England to personally care for him. The experience of nursing her father inspired her change in career as she realized that nursing was something that she felt strongly about. She had wanted to do something useful, something for people from an early age, and by the late 19th century, the stigma surrounding the job, once regarded as suitable only for the old, weak, drunk, or uneducated, had begun to fade. In April 1896, after a few months of assessment at Fountains Fever Hospital in Tooting, South London, Edith Cavell began her nursing training at the London Hospital in Whitechapel, what we now know as the Royal London Hospital. She trained under matron Eva Lux, a friend of Florence Nightingale. Cavell did not particularly impress the formidable Miss Lux, who later remarked Edith Louisa Cavell had plenty of capacity for her work when she chose to exert herself, and noted that she was not at all punctual. By today's standards, the conditions were grueling. Nurses worked from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. with just half an hour for lunch, and the pay was meagre at £10 a year, equivalent to $1,130 today. Yet such demanding hours and low wages were typical for nurses in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Lux, known for her strict standards and reserved praise, also observed that Cavell had a very self-sufficient manner, which was very apt to prejudice people against her. A year later, a typhoid epidemic broke out in Maidstone, Kent. Edith joined 5 other nurses from the London hospital to help. Out of the 1,700 who contracted the disease, only 132 people died. For her work in helping the epidemic sufferers, Edith was awarded the Maidstone Medal, the only medal she would ever receive from her country. She completed her nursing training in 1898 and began working as a private nurse with the private nursing institution of the London Hospital, caring for patients in their homes from October 1898 to December 1899. During this time, she traveled to treat patients suffering from a variety of conditions, including chronic illnesses like cancer and gout, as well as acute cases such as pneumonia and appendicitis. In 1899, on the recommendation of Eva Lux, Cavell became night supervisor at St. Pancras Infirmary, where many patients suffered from chronic conditions. She then served as assistant matron at Shoreditch Hospital in November 1903, before moving to St. Leonard's Hospital. At St. Leonard's, she enhanced maternity nurse training and introduced home visits for newborns, a practice that would later become standard. In September 1906, Edith went to work for the Manchester and Salford Sick and Poor and Private Nursing Institution as a nurse at one of the Queen's District Nursing Homes, in a temporary position for 3 months, a position that she found tiring. Since the matron Miss Hall became ill, she filled in as matron, In a letter dated 12th of March 1907, she wrote to Miss Lux at London Hospital saying that it was a heavy responsibility and that she knew little of the work of the Queen's district nurses. While she was in the north of England, she worked with patients in the neighbouring terraced houses and became well known as the poor man's Nightingale. A Mancunian contemporary wrote, "I can see her now in her cape and her black bag, hurrying through the streets. People would look up and say, 'There's Nurse Cavell.' I remember her always first on the scene when there was an accident in one of the mills or an explosion in a mine." The sense of duty that had been evident in her childhood developed into an almost religious devotion. Everyone who encountered Miss Cavell quickly understood that she placed duty above friendship or personal comfort. Her hospital training had taught her the value of discipline, and she would never tolerate inefficiency or any tendency towards slackness in her subordinates. As a surgical nurse, her skill was remarkable, but her true strength lay in her ability to organize, a quality that set her apart in the profession. Though outwardly stern and reserved, Cavell's dedication to nursing and strong sense of duty earned her the respect of those who worked under her. While she maintained high standards, she was also approachable, and many nurses sought her out for guidance, knowing they would receive thoughtful and tactful advice. Edith's growing reputation as a skilled nurse and efficient organizer did not go unnoticed. Dr. Antoine Depage, a prominent Belgian royal surgeon and president of the Belgian Red Cross, was particularly impressed by the high standards of British nursing and sought to bring the same level of professionalism to Belgium. It was only a matter of time before he would call upon Edith Cavell to help him realize this vision. In September 1907, after a short break, Edith Cavell returned to Brussels at the request of Dr. Antoine Depage to care for one of his young patients. The following month, Depage established Belgium's first training school for nurses, l'École Belge d'Infirmerie Diplômée, also known as the Berkendel Medical Institute, located on Rue de la Culture, now Rue Franz Maget in Ixelles, on the outskirts of Brussels. The school, housed in 4 adjoining buildings, aimed to modernize nursing in Belgium. Recognizing her exceptional leadership and nursing skills, Depage appointed Cavell as its director, entrusting her with the mission of transforming nursing education in Belgium. Depage's decision to establish the school stemmed from more than just the desire to emulate British nursing standards. He saw an urgent need to modernize nursing in Belgium, as many nursing sisters, despite their education, lacked proper training in hygiene and aseptic techniques. Until then, patient care had been largely overseen by religious institutions which, despite their commitment, lacked the medical expertise to implement life-saving advancements. For example, the common practice of reusing sponges without sterilization significantly increased infection risk. Inspired by Florence Nightingale's reforms during the Crimean War, Dr. Antoine Depage sought to establish a professional nursing system in Belgium, one that could keep pace with medical advancements and combat the spread of diseases such as tuberculosis, typhoid, cholera, and pneumonia. These illnesses, along with high infant mortality rates, were worsened by poor sanitation, inadequate training, and outdated medical practices. By introducing structured training programs and modern hygiene standards, Depage aimed to raise nursing standards, reduce preventable deaths, and modernize Belgian healthcare. Cavell's new role required discretion. As an Englishwoman and a Protestant, she was stepping into a field long dominated by Roman Catholic nursing sisterhoods. Despite initial prejudice and at times outright hostility, Mrs. Cavell's professionalism and warm demeanour soon won over both staff and patients, just as she had in England. Edith rose to the challenge of her new role with determination. Despite her own earlier struggles with punctuality, she enforced strict discipline at the training school. She kept the watch at breakfast, and any nurse arriving more than 2 minutes late would forfeit 2 hours of her free time. Though some found her stern and strict, her approach stemmed from a deep desire to elevate the profession and instill a strong work ethic. Resistance came not only from the student nurses, but also from Belgian society. Edith wrote home, The old idea that it's a disgrace for a woman to work is still held in Belgium, and women of good birth and education still think they lose caste by earning their own living. Establishing a formal training school for nurses was a bold experiment in a country where many still viewed working women as socially diminished. Cavell, however, was undeterred. She began with just 5 pupils, training them according to modern nursing standards. Their uniform consisted of blue cotton dresses, high white aprons, white linen sleeves covering their forearms, Sister Dora caps without strings, and a stiff white collars. The contrast, she wrote to the nursing mirror, between these probationers and the nuns in their heavy robes or the lay nurses in their grimy apparel is the contrast of the unhygienic past with the enlightened present. These Belgian probationers in 3 years' time will look back on their early days of training with wonder. Cavell's vision for the school soon began to take shape. By April 1908, the number of probationers had grown to 13. Several staff members were experienced English nurses from the London Hospital or Shoreditch Infirmary. In addition to training the probationers, they also cared for private patients at the nursing home attached to the school. Between 1909 and 1910, enrollment continued to rise, with 23 pupils studying under Cavell's guidance. The school's reputation spread, and soon the city of Brussels, Saint-Gilles Hospital, and Jumet Hospital sought nurses trained under her leadership. At the time of Cavell's appointment, Belgium had no established nursing profession. Through her pioneering work, she became recognized as the founder of modern nursing education in the country. By 1910, her contributions had gained so much professional respect that she launched L'Infirmière, the Nurse, a journal dedicated to advancing nursing knowledge. By 1911, her program was supplying nurses for 3 hospitals, 24 communal schools, and 13 kindergartens across Belgium. Cavell's work also earned the admiration of Queen Elizabeth of Belgium, who recognized the importance of professional nursing. When the Queen broke her arm, she specifically chose treatment from nurses trained at Cavell's institution. This royal endorsement significantly boosted the school's reputation, helping to overcome lingering resistance. Previously, some viewed the school with suspicion, fearing it would rival the Catholic nuns and lay nurses who traditionally dominated patient care. The Queen developed a deep admiration for Cavell, a sentiment that was sincerely reciprocated. Cavell saw nursing as more than just patient care. She viewed it to educate and empower women. Quiet and unassuming, yet determined and courageous, Cavell remained steadfast in her mission, leaving a lasting impact on the future of the Belgian nursing profession. She once declared, "The spread of light and knowledge is bound to follow in years to come. The nurses will not only teach, as none others have the opportunity of doing, the laws of health and the prevention and healing of disease. They will show their countrywomen that education and position do not constitute a bar to an independent life. Rather, they are a good and solid foundation on which to build a career that demands the best and highest qualities that womanhood can offer." As directress of 3 hospitals, Cavell's role demanded both exceptional leadership and relentless dedication. By late 1913 and early 1914, in addition to delivering multiple daily lectures, she gave 4 lectures to doctors and 2 to nurses each week, all while caring for a friend's daughter and looking after her 2 dogs, Don and Jack. She always attended the operating theatre herself, ensuring the highest standards of care. One of her greatest joys was the children's ward, which she had personally designed blue and white. She made a special effort to visit the young patients every evening. While wealthier Belgians paid for private nursing services, Cavell never turned away those in need. Her dedication to the sick and poor remained unwavering. By 1914, Cavell had firmly established herself as a pioneer of modern nursing in Belgium. However, the stability she had worked so hard to create was about to be shattered by events unfolding across Europe.